As a filmmaker, as a collaborator, I like to create an environment, if I can, help create an environment where we're working together and it's bringing out the best in us. And so that means generous on all the levels that you can be. And as an actor, it also means knowing how to speak different languages. Not all actors speak the same actor. Sissy Spacek, when you direct her, that's a different thing energetically than when you direct Kyle Chandler or Wesley Snipes or Glenn Close or Mario Van Peebles or Melvin Van Peebles. So the advantage I've had is I think as an actor is that I think it's unusual. Not a lot of directors have been directed by Francis Ford Coppola and Clint Eastwood and Melvin Van Peebles and Michael Mann. And so I've gotten to be directed by some pretty accomplished filmmakers and bring my own flavor to what I do when I do it.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
On the occasion of the release of his new movie, Outlaw Posse, which he wrote, directed, and stars in, Mario Van Peebles sat down with me in New York City to talk about the work.
Do you have a typical way that you like to begin your preparation process when you get a new character? Even if it's a character that you wrote and are actually trying to figure out how to inhabit now. Do you have a typical way in?
I suspect that my way in varies depending on the project, partly because a movie has to define its own tone. And part of the process as an actor is not just, okay, I'm going to go in and act in something and in a vacuum, I'm going to play this character and do what I do. I have to also look at the world in which I'm existing. So if you're in a movie, for example, I got an opportunity to play the Ayatollah of rock and roll in a film with Clint Eastwood called Heartbreak Ridge. Mm. Now, I read the script. I watched a lot of Clint's early works. I thought about what this movie was. And I came to an understanding of what I thought I could safely predict would be the tone of the movie. Because within the first 10 to 12 minutes, the movie's going to tell you what it is, hopefully. And that's how people go, oh, I can laugh a little bit. It's an action adventure. It's a dramedy. It's a drama. What is the tone? In the movie, there was another young actor. We were all part of this platoon together, and Eastwood was our sergeant, our gunny sergeant. And this was a young Hispanic brother. And he played this sort of brooding, dark character that he was creating and doing. And I went over to him and I said, I noticed you're sort of playing a very serious guy in this movie. What are you doing? He said, well, yes, because at the end, we fight in Viecas and they're in a way my brothers and sisters and they're Spanish speaking like this. And I said, I hear you, but I just would caution you on that. And here's why. This ain't Hamburger Hill. This is not Oliver Stone. This is not Platoon. Yeah. This is Make My Day, right? And although it's going to have filmic elements, it's still a movie. And so you may be the angry Hispanic guy that never has a chance to complete in the body of this film this statement that you think you're making on character or geopolitics, if you want. Yeah. You got to understand where you are. And within that, mine that and understand that and play it. And there was another guy who was really funny. He had us cracking up. He had Clint cracking up and laughing. And just every scene, he was just hilarious. And Eastwood cut him out of the movie. Although we laughed during dailies and it was fun, it meant the bullets weren't real. Because if under that kind of pressure, you're standing up and doing funny shit, then that goes against the seriousness of the drama you're in. You've got to, And so I found a lane, which wasn't Hamburger Hill, and yet it wasn't Dumb and Dumber. And I found a lane. I said, within this lane, if I watch what Eastwood's doing and get there, and within that lane, I can make a character that you believe the evolution of them, but you could also believe that he would be, as a black man, so full of himself that he would not know that playing rock and roll in a country western bar might be problematic. Because I had to go, well, what brother would do that? You know, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't go in there. Mario wouldn't go in there and have no idea what you're dealing with. And he's going to try to be Jimi Hendrix or want to be Jimi Hendrix in a rock and a country western bar, that you might have a problem. Yeah. Forgetting the fact that it's a raceocracy we're in. That aside. And so I sort of had to engineer a character that was so full of his own thing, didn't need a response to a question, was the Ayatollah of rock and roll. Right. So listening to his own echo, that you could believe he could skate over things, and yet later in the film become street aware, and later in the film wants to actually re-up and in a way become the new gunny sergeant. And so that was part of the trick, was not just going through a process as an actor and saying, I want to play my best role. I would have been in the wrong film.
Yeah.
Right. So part of I have to be, you know, if I'm lucky, I get to spend time with the filmmaker before. If I'm just going into a process, for example, when I met with Michael Mann about playing Malcolm X and Ali. Well, I had an idea of who Malcolm was. I had an idea. My father had interviewed Brother Malcolm when my dad was in Paris. He was a journalist. He interviewed Malcolm X. Later, when I played Malcolm X, Malcolm's daughter worked with me to humanize the portrayal of her father, and my two daughters were playing Malcolm's daughters. So I had some really interesting connections in. But when I met Michael Mann, I quickly got a sense that he had a real handle on the big scope of what he wanted to tell, what the fabric was we were dealing with, what the colors were. And I could see why Muhammad Ali said, this is the guy I want to tell my story. And so I went in there knowing what the tone was, right? I didn't have to guess, because I said, okay, it's a drama, it's serious. It's not going to be a lot of levity. You know, and we're playing Malcolm during a very tricky time, but I'm still going to humanize the portrayal of Malcolm, because he was a loving father and a playful cat, and he had a wicked sense of humor, as does Ali, by the way, has a wicked sense of humor. So within that, I played into that reality. So I think part of the discovery as an actor is saying, okay, what's the world we're living in? Right. So if I'm making Outlaw Posse and I'm going to a really sharp actor like John Carroll Lynch, part of our conversation was not about the character that he was going to play. Our conversation was, what is the tone of the film? And then once he understood the tone of the film, then we could move on to the character in Outlaw Posse that he was going to play. And what our dynamics would be. And that was very important, because I have made mistakes before where I went in going, oh, I'll play this, and I was acting in a movie that was just entertainment. Right. You know, or I was just, you know, or like that other guy, just entertaining in a movie that's actually edutainment. Right. And say, oh, okay, so part of it is that. Obviously, if I'm the filmmaker, it's a lot easier for me to already know the tone. In Outlaw Posse, there's moments where you go, okay, that's got some pop to it. These are affable people, but the bullets are still real. And, you know, so I could go to DC Young Fly and say, okay, within here, you've got to play the reality that we're going into a very tricky situation. And you're not in your superpower lane where you're going to do whiteface or blackface or something. It was a little different now. So you're going to have to bring that comedy down and way under. And he's still a guy that, as many African Americans did and many Jewish Americans did, is that when you've dealt with trauma, you get a real good sense of comedic timing, because we've had to deal with trauma and process it in very difficult situations. And so the people that survive that have a sort of gallows humor, I think. Yeah. You know, so we have a different sense of, oh shit, we got great Jewish comedians, great black comedians, because we've been through recent trauma, right? And so, but I could also say, this is this kind of situation. This is not the time for that. Right. And he could totally get it. Right. But I was able, as an actor, and a director, because I speak actor, but I'm also in the scene with him. Like
Right.
you're in the scene with me right now.
can
My
actually
best
set
acting
the
is not
tone.
just my acting, it's going to also be my reacting. Right. So I'm reacting to a question that you're giving me. So I think part of the process is first defining the world. What world am I in? Okay. I'm in, where am I and what's the tone? And then within that, is it Love Actually?
Right.
No. Is it Charlie Chaplin? Is it this? Is it that? What's the film? And then say, oh no, okay, it's Ali. It's, what is that movie? And then once I understand that, I could do that. And so my advantage, like I said, when I'm a filmmaker as well, in that I sort of already know what I'm going for tonally.
And then it's just imparting that on the other actors.
Correct.
Then. And,
Right.
But how did you have this so early on? Like, because that you're Heartbreak Ridge, you're relatively young there. You're in your 20s, right? That was your first like big kind of breakout role. You were already kind of operating with a director hat on, in a way, right?
Right.
Is that just in you already, where you're approaching the work of the actor directorially like that already?
I think also in making mistakes.
Yeah.
I've done other pieces where I went in saying, I'm going to really act in this, I'm going to really figure out the character's pathos and their arc and how are they different in the end than they are in the beginning. And I was absolutely in the wrong movie, and I never got a chance to make that statement. And I was like, oh my goodness. So I was acting in a movie that was requiring a different skill set. Not that it's a bad skill set. I'm not making, there's no judgment on it, but just saying, okay. It's just like doing an interview. If we were doing a morning radio show, they'd have already gone to commercial by now.
Right.
But you're clearly saying, no, long form answer is okay. Staying real is okay. Thoughtful is okay. Right? And I know that I'll say, okay, in this film I'm doing, it's okay to think. In fact, some of the best acting will be without lines. And I might use the dialogue as subtext, take the dialogue out, but the actors know what the top text is and they now know what the subtext is. And we can do that all with a look. And I think that can be equally smart, sometimes more powerful.
When you were starting out, because your dad was a filmmaker, of course, were you having to operate on a dual-sided coin of the road of an actual filmmaker and the road of an actor, and then trying to obviously at times push them together into the same project? But early on, was there this operation that you had to figure out of like, which road am I going down here? Which one am I presenting to this industry?
Right. Yeah. So you're asking an interesting question, and I ask it from the other end of the telescope in a way. And that is, if you grew up on a family farm, you learn how to plow the North 40, you learn how to feed the chickens, you learn how to take care of the horses, and it would all be a part of the zen of farming. And if you grew up in a by any means necessary independent filmmaking family, like the Van Peebles family, you'd learn a little bit about editing, about carrying cables, probably about acting, about music, about this and that. And it would be all part of the zen of filmmaking. Later on, you'd sort of cut it up and go, oh, that person, that's their lane.
Yeah.
This is that person's lane. So I saw it as a collective more. I didn't see it, it's like a performance troupe, a theater group, right? So my dad was doing indie film and, little shorts and stuff, and bringing the neighbors in, using this person for that role, this person. Some people just were better at it and got better at it. And then they would start to excel in a specific area, right? So I saw it all as a part of the storytelling. And it was later on that I was like, oh no, that's this. And now that I'm directing, and I'm not supposed to really help them move the camera equipment because that's a different union, and I'll get a fine for that, or they'll get in trouble if I help the makeup lady carry her bag, or I jump in and fix somebody's wardrobe. If you and I were on TV right now and your collar's wrong, my first instinct would be to, hey man, your collar, and I'd fix your collar for you. I don't think about, oh, that's not my job. Yeah. So and so has to come in and do that. Just you get in where you fit in. So it's more of a think of going, okay, I have to resist that impulse That's it's more natural for me to say, hey man, are you still recording? We good? Everything lights fine, blah, 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 and help. And I'm always reminded the people, oh no, you're not supposed to do that. That's someone else's thing. And you don't do that. I'll get on a big studio film as an actor and sometimes as a filmmaker. And I have to remember to not do that because I don't like inefficiency. I don't like waste. Yeah. You know, I like to keep it moving and the energy. Yeah. And I think also it's healthy optics. When you're on an Eastwood movie and he gets up and moves the baby legs across the field, or, you know, I'll do a movie and as a director, but maybe one day I'll serve food in the catering line. Because the optics of seeing me in service to others is good. Because part of what I'm doing there, and that's not the acting, but more the filmmaking part, is that I'm acknowledging that it's a collaborative. Yes. I'm acknowledging the we. I'm helping to create a climate of cooperation and kindness. As a filmmaker, as a collaborator, I like to create an environment, if I can, help create an environment where we're working together and it's bringing out the best in us. And so that means generous on all the levels that you can be. And as an actor, it also means knowing how to speak different languages. Not all actors speak the same actor. Right. Sissy Spacek, when you direct her, that's a different thing energetically than when you direct Kyle Chandler or Wesley Snipes or Glenn Close or Mario Van Peebles or Melvin Van Peebles. So the advantage I've had is I think as an actor is that I think it's unusual. Not a lot of directors have been directed by Francis Ford Coppola and Clint Eastwood and Melvin Van Peebles and Michael Mann. And so I've gotten to be directed by some pretty accomplished filmmakers and bring my own flavor to what I do when I do it.
There's not a lot of people that have had the experience acting at the same time the experience directing. What has directing as a job, coming in as a hired director, what has that done to your acting process and your acting craft? And then also vice versa. And talk a little bit about over time where this keeps happening and where you are now with putting that together as experience and education that you pass on to the people that need it when you're working with them.
It's delicious. It's wonderful. I feel like I'm still young enough to be a fairly humble, malleable student and old enough to be a badass teacher. Yeah. And I think if you look at water, if we came from the ocean and we look at water and we say, well, we're probably, I don't know what percentage of our bodies is liquid, but we have a lot of liquid in us, right? When is water at its freshest? Well, if it's stagnant, it's getting mosquito larvae, it's starting to get funky. But if it's got new water, fresh water coming in and old water going out, now it's not a stagnant pond, it's a stream. And as it gets stronger, it's a river. And that's when I'm at my best, when I am teaching and learning. And it can be in any level. I may learn someone else's workout. I may learn about someone else's spiritual beliefs, I was just in Cartagena, Colombia, learning things meeting people I've never met before, going to Palenque, where they speak, these Africans escaped to Palenque and learned a whole different language. And I went to the town of Palenque and they said they had to make a deal with the Spaniards that they could keep their freedom, all these escaped slaves, but there was one condition. They had to keep a white church in the center of their town square with a white deity. And that was interesting. So that it reminded me of Frantz Fanon, where he said, the most powerful colonizers leave behind the church and the schools to socialize the oppressed to the oppressor's point of view, that one good priest could do the work of 100 soldiers. So I love learning new things and saying, how do I get out of my box? Well, part of it is travel, right? So you travel and you see how other people live. And the more you do that, you wind up seeing our commonalities, not just our differences. Well, what I love as a filmmaker, and I'm still coming back to that, is I get to go off into 1908 and make a Western and work with folks whose superpowers, different areas. For its DC Young Flies coming from comedy, or Emmett Walsh, who's, I love seeing in movies, and to Cedric the Entertainer, or Whoopi Goldberg, or my own son Mandela Van Peebles, and Neil McDonough, who, and saying, okay, how do I make this fabric of Americana in 1908? We think we're divided now. We were more divided then, and yet make this so that we're all in the same film. And I think my ability to go, I'm in there with you. It's not that you're taking direction from someone who's not in there with you. My ass is right on the screen with you. It better look good. We are all in this together, literally. Not only do I have to be friends with you, I got to be friends with your horse, because I'm going to have to jump on your horse and know that your timing is going to work and you're going to be there with me. And we're, it's an independent film, so it's not relying on CGI or AI. It's relying on real guy. That's it.
Yeah.
So my son's got to race up with his horse and bring up, and I got to jump on it, and it's all in one shot. So being able to, I think if you have a conductor that's played strings, played winds, played percussion, and they come over to you and give you a note or a thought, you get that they know.
That weighs a lot more, that note, right?
Yeah, so I go, wow, okay, they know what they're doing. And then I can still say, and what if I did this? And they could hear that and go, boom, boom. Actually, that works there, bring that there, and let's go again, take it from the top, and we know where it is. I love that. And to the point where I will also make an effort to bring in other people who are filmmakers. So if you look at my first Western Posse, I have Charles Lane was a filmmaker, he's in it. The Hudlin brothers, who are filmmakers, in it. My mentor, Stephen Cannell, who's a filmmaker, is in it. My dad, who's a filmmaker, is in it. And of course Woody Strode, and then Pam Grier and Isaac Hayes, on and on and on. So I love taking other people who may know more than me.
Right.
And that's great, because every time you learn, every time you teach someone something, you take another step towards immortality, right? But every time you're learning, that's what I love it. I love learning with and hanging out with people who don't always think like me or vote like me. If you just hung out with people like yourself, it'd be kind of a boring place.
Yeah.
So when I have to go now, literally, I finished doing Outlaw Posse, and we're doing press to bring it out, clearly. But I may have to do a pickup on a show that I just directed. I'll just go back in there as a director. And then I may be on to something else where I'll be actor-director, or director-actor. And then on to something else after that, well, I'll just be director. But I can tell you this, they're never all the same. I learn something new each time. And I think that's part of what I love about it.
We've never had on this show, I don't think, an accomplished television director so that I can ask this question. Usually I have people that are successful on shows that are multi-season, and then I always say, isn't it weird that you're on a show for 3 seasons, and all of a sudden there's this director that comes on and has to direct you, and you've been living with this character for 4 years, and this person comes on for 1 episode and directs, and that's the captain of this ship suddenly that you've been on for 3 years or 4 years or whatever. And I always want to know what that's like for these people, and they have varying degrees of whatever about that, discomfort or interest. Some people it's great. It's a fresh voice on this, and it actually helps. But I have never talked to somebody on the other side of it, where it's what is it like to go on to that, especially as an actor, knowing that they may be a little bit have an ownership of their character, and you want that. If you're a good director, you want that to keep going. But how do you then slide in there and actually do your work that you need to do as a director in that environment?
Right. Well, I've been on both sides of that. So I had my own show called Sunny Spoon, and different directors would come in, and some would know the character and know the show well, and some didn't. So one, I promised myself I'd do my homework. So before I go on someone's show, I watch as many episodes as I can. I read the scripts, I study it, I think about it, and I go in knowing the tone. Like I got the opportunity to direct a show I wanted to do, and I tuned into it late, called Lost back in the day. I remember the show Lost. And I met with the producer, Jack Brewer, and they weren't really hiring new directors. They were hiring directors that were familiar with the show. But they took a chance on me, and I really enjoyed it. But my homework, and I decided to do it, I was doing season 6, was to watch all the episodes. But that's the best homework in the world. I could sit and watch Lost.
Yeah.
I watched all the episodes, I read the script, so I went in knowing it. And I think the actors really appreciate that someone said, I respect the material enough and the language enough and your work enough to understand the evolution enough. So when you talk to me about something, we're speaking the same language. You're not having to make up for stuff, right? I think for on the side of the director, it's sort of like being, remember the Poitier movie To Serve With Love?
Sure.
It's sort of like that character, in that you're sort of being called in to direct something, and you're like a badass substitute teacher. Now, what you got to understand is that you may say, oh, let's move that couch. But before you move that couch, you got to find out, because there may be a hole in the rug right under there. You're there, you move furniture a little bit, but they live there and they know it better than you. So you've got to get respect to that. But then you can come at it with a freshness and invigorate it. And it's sort of like it injects a new, if it's done well, it injects a new life into it.
Yeah.
But I tell you an add to your question is that I've done the middle of that too, where, for example, on Wu-Tang, American Saga, on the Wu-Tang Clan, obviously, I worked with RZA, and I was, on season 2, they asked me to be producer director. So that means I'm the supervising director, right? So I have to direct a number of the shows myself, but I can't direct them all. I am now a part of bringing in other directors who I feel will gel with our actors, keep us on pattern budget, but get the overall vibe of the show. And that's a big job, right? So I'm not only directing it, and keeping our young brothers in the show, on their stuff, on their A game. I've got to bring in other directors, and there would be great directors who sometimes didn't know how to speak to our actors. And we have actors, some who are accomplished, some who did theater, and some who are raw from the streets. Do you know what I mean? So if you're coming in there and you're not dealing with a raw from the streets brother, but you're talking Juilliard, and he's like, yo, what you want? What's in the scene, man? And well, I think the pathos here. And just, dude, you're gonna be like, what?
Yeah.
So you better be able to switch gears.
Yeah.
Right?
Because
you're dealing with some rough cats, and they're gonna smell bullshit real quick. Come on, you don't even know nothing about this.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And it'll be really, so they've gotta take they'll test you. They gotta in there. Now you go in, I went in to act in something in a show called Damages with Glenn Close. And the Kessler brothers were doing it. And I went to do the show, and I was just acting in it, and they said, we need to talk to you. I said, oh, is this about my character? And they said, well, not really. So we went up in the office, and okay, what's going on? What's happening? And they said, yeah, we have a show coming up, and we have an actor who's really needs an actor's director. And he's pushing back on working with the director we have slated.
Wow.
And we need an actor's director. So we're going to need you to do that show do this as an actor, but then do that one as a director actor.
Wow.
And I said, okay. And the actor was William Hurt.
I was going to say, I really want to know who this is.
Yeah. And he's a complex dude, a very smart dude, a very heady dude. And I had to find his language. But really it was about him knowing that the director could respect the process wasn't just directing traffic.
Right.
That was really important to him.
Right.
And I definitely get it. And then also he got a kick out of speaking French, and I speak pretty decent French. So we were able to communicate and play around. And so we had a wonderful time with it. And then so William Hurt and Glenn Close together, you know, those are two, you know, accomplished, smart, insightful people. And so the way you approach that is absolutely different than the way I'd approach the Wu-Tang situation.
Right.
But I've been in a situation where I was just going in as an actor and wound up, they said we need a really actor's director. And then I was recently directing a show in Wales called Black Cake. That is from a book Oprah got involved with. I'm just directing it. And then the producer comes walking over quickly to me. And my radar goes up. Oh shit, what's going on? He said, listen, can I talk to you for a second? Sure. I was just set the scene up and I stepped away. I said, what's going on? He said, our lead guest star got COVID. They can't come. How quickly can you learn some lines? Luckily, I fit the
This
outfit.
is what happens when you have many hats laying
There you
around.
go. Sometimes it's a cowboy hat. So it sometimes shifts back and forth. And so now the lead actress is coming in and she's expecting to act with the guest star. And then I'm sitting there very well dressed for a director. And she's like, holy shit. Mario's in the scene, you know. So it happens.
Yeah.
It happens, man. It happens, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, again, it's like the good thing is that in either case, I have plenty of those T-shirts. It's not like I'm looking to get more T-shirts as an actor, and more T-shirts as a director.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like when I'm just acting, I'm not trying to direct at all. Right. And so it's kind of like being a plumber on vacation in Hawaii. The last thing I want to do is look under the sink.
No.
But if the sink breaks down and they
They're
don't
going to
have a
come
plumber,
looking for you.
okay, get me this 12 wrench.
Is there a plumber in the house?
Totally, you know. And then the other thing is, as a director, I don't have a lot of ego. Right. I don't, like, there was this great scene in New Jack where Wesley and Alan Payne have to do the scene where Wesley finally executes Alan. Right? And I called it my brother's keeper scene. And I had the good sense to get out of the way and capture the magic on film. You know, I don't have to put my thumbprint on everything. I'm not in it for that. You've got to leave room for the magic. And sometimes that magic comes from other sources. And that's the fun of it.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not my best ideas are not always my ideas. There's other people's ideas. That's the truth, man.
Yes.
And I go, oh, wow, that's a great thing. That's way better than what we were going to do. Let's do that. You know, and when you create that kind of environment where you can collaborate with people. And one of the things when we did Outlaw Posse, I was like, part of the test to get in would be, if we were 12 years old at camp, would we want to play together? Would we be like, yo, we're going to get out, we're going to climb over the wall, 12, as soon as the lights go out, would we want to play together? And if I could find the inner child in that man or woman, that 12-year-old, and go, yes, you're still there, you're still alive, let's go. That's a big part of it. Find their inner child. And then responsible adult and all that other good stuff, and make it work, be efficient, all that stuff.
Sure.
But if we could still have fun doing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Were you looking to make another Western? Were you trying to get finance for something like this, and it finally just happened? Or how did this come about? Was this born another way?
I made Posse, I think 31 or 32 years ago, and I didn't have kids at the time, but I had my old man. I had Melvin Van Peebles. And in this one, my dad had passed. I didn't have him, but I had my son, Mandela Van Peebles. And I thought, what an interesting sort of bookending. I could be the connective tissue generationally. My father gave me my first lines ever in a feature film. And I gave him his last lines ever in a feature film. I was like, wow, that's kind of heavy. And then I was thinking about the line that Stagecoach Mary has when my son Mandela and I are on the top of the stagecoach with her, and she says, boy, you're lucky. You're part of the first generation of black boys that can legally call a black man father. That until 1863, the slave master made all the decisions for the product, the offspring. They often got rid of the father. They kept the mother to nurse the product, but they deliberately got rid of the father. So you couldn't legally have a black father until 1863 for Emancipation Proclamation, 1865 if you're in Texas. And I thought, wow, we've only had since then to get our father game on, our dedication, if you will. And yet in the Van Peebles family lineage, we've had a pretty strong paternal line. And I thought, how cool is that? That with my dad, I didn't have to, in the movie, fake the love. That was real. And with my son, we didn't have to fake the drama or the love. We had to reshape it for the characters. And I also was playing some country. I was playing Johnny Cash. I was thinking about that song, Boy Named Sue, and how he has this sort of estranged concept of his dad and what his relationship is. And then, like Mark Twain has a great quote where he says, all my life my father was an idiot, and at 21 he was a genius, meaning that I got to a place where I understood what he was doing.
Yeah.
And I didn't always like my dad. As a kid, I thought he was a paternal fascist.
Yeah.
So I had been thinking more about doing another Western. People had been asking me for years to do another Western. And then I was also thinking that, right now America seems in some ways to be very divided, as I was saying, that some of us are watching MSNBC and CNN and others are watching Fox News or QAnon or whatever that stuff is. And we no longer share even the same facts. But we can all watch a Western. And if I can bring this Western gumbo and make this gumbo with love for everybody, then maybe if I build it, they will come. And in my own family, I've got white, black, brown, I've got gay aunt, I've got a Trumper aunt. So like I said, I've got to love with big arms and be inclusive. And I think that film can create an environment where you can laugh in mixed company at stuff you wouldn't bring up naturally at a cocktail party. When's the last time you saw Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid rob a bank and one of the guys is blackface in whiteface? Not every day. And then the befuddled sheriff, who's played by Joseph Culp, who's the son, he looks just like his dad, Robert Culp of I Spy, right? And he says, black and white working in cahoots together. Who could have seen that coming? That this is a group that sees their diversity of his strength. To show America a movie where this multi-culti group of outlaws has diversity as a strength during an election year, when we really need to come together. I think maybe culture can be a little bit healing.
Yes.
Dr. King says, we all learn to live together as brothers and sisters in harmony, or we perish together as fools. And I think that you can use this wonderful medium to show our commonalities, to let us laugh at ourselves and at each other and with each other, and entertain us, but maybe edutain us. The French, I was saying, le plus ça change, le plus ça reste le même. The more things change, the more they stay the same. It was kind of fun to say, okay, we think we're in a place now where we're really divided, but guess what? Before, women couldn't vote. You had the Chinese Exclusion Act. You had the Mexican-American War. Black folks, just got the right. No woman of any color could vote. And yet you had a really diverse West. 1 out of 4 cowboys was black.
Amazing. And
so at the end of the film, to show the real pictures of some of these people and go, holy shit, they really existed. This guy becomes heavyweight champ. He's got a white wife, Jack Johnson, and they open up a club called Black and Tan where people of all colors were welcome. That's pretty cool. You knew he was a heavyweight champ. Did you know about the part about opening the Black and Tan? Most people don't.
No.
I didn't. I'd go, wow, and I found it. The Chinese guy we got in our movie, Mr. Tam, is the great, 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 great ancestor of the original Mr. Tam, who worked on the railroad and then has the longest running family-owned restaurant in America, in Montana, Chinese restaurant. That's the real guy.
Wow.
He's playing one of his own relatives.
Wow.
So to have that kind of dynamic where, King said that we all have to get along like brothers and sisters to understand. But that means we have to take pride in it. If you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going. And how could it be more interesting than to say the backstory of Chief, my character, is that, when old man Lincoln died, the reparations, the 40 acres and a mule that were supposed to go to the freed Africans went to the slave owners instead for loss of property. And it was at that point that my character says, you know what, I'm going to get my own reparations and give it out. And so as the son sort of learns this about the dad, who had been sort of pitched to him as just an outlaw. He sees the complexities of it. I thought, that's a wonderful art.
Right,
you know?
right.
That's why we did the tagline, history, and slavery was legal. Not allowing women to vote was legal. Jim Crow was legal. When the laws are unjust, the just are outlaws.
I love that tagline. And I usually hate taglines.
Thank you.
And I deem it so it must be so.
Yes. Right on. Don't leave me hanging here.
Mario Van Peebles, thank you so much.
This was really refreshing.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of The Gotham, formerly IFP. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.